"50 years ago, a dam was built that effectively blocked all fish passage up and into the Androscoggin River. In 1979, the Andro was a polluted river with little to offer its neighboring communities besides a place to dump waste, a source of water to cool industrial plants, and hydro energy. But today, the Andro is a state-designated freshwater body suitable for fishing, swimming, supporting fish and wildlife, and even potential use as a public water supply after treatment. Half a century later, circumstances are significantly different, and fish are looking for access into their historic breeding grounds. The original 50-year operating license for the dam is expiring in 2029, and now the federal government needs to decide if it's appropriate to relicense the dam and under what conditions. This video will present some of the background and potential outcomes of this once-in-a-lifetime debate. This is the Androscoggin River, the third longest river in Maine. It flows 178 miles and drains an area of 3,450 square miles. It captures water from the Appalachian Mountains bordering Canada, large parts of northeastern New Hampshire, and western Maine, ultimately draining past Brunswick into Merrymeeting Bay, where it joins the Kennebec River before flowing into the sea at Fort Popham. Long before colonization, this river sustained many Wabanaki people, and they called it the Androscoggin, or the place to smoke fish or meat at the falls. When they arrived, early English settlers quickly noticed the Androscoggin's extraordinary abundance of fish. In 1673, a commercial fishing operation in Brunswick took 40 barrels of salmon and more than 90 kegs of sturgeon in 3 weeks' time. It was reported that if more salt were available to preserve the fish for export, the take would have been much greater. But it wouldn't take long for overexploitation and river engineering to have an impact. By 1788, Brunswick residents petitioned the Massachusetts government for help, stating that overfishing with methods like seines, driving nets, and weirs was leading to the final ruin of the fish in Merrymeeting Bay and river system. As early as 1846, there were 3 dams at Brunswick Falls. These dams, built of various materials, including wood and stone, were relatively small. Importantly, they were quite porous with side pools and channels that may have allowed for a fair amount of fish migration. These barriers, combined with years of pollution that made the Androscoggin one of the most polluted rivers in the U.S., resulted in ever-declining fish populations. In 1979, construction of a new dam was started. By 1982, the original dams were removed and replaced with a single 42-foot tall and 605-foot-long concrete dam that spanned the full length of the river. This eliminated all possibility of unassisted fish passage. Any fish that were going to make it upstream from this point on would need human help. It's important to note that this dam is at the head of tide. With each ocean tide, the water rises and falls at its base. As the lowest downstream dam, it acts as the doorway to the entire 3,450 square mile watershed. Practically speaking, for well over 40 years, that door has been closed to fish migration. In an attempt to assist migration, a vertical slot fish ladder was installed. This was the first such fishway installed on the East Coast and was a scaled-down version of those designed for the Columbia River. In many ways, an experiment. This fish ladder has operated for almost 50 years, and after repeated study, both federal and Maine state agencies acknowledge that it has been a relative failure. When designed, the ladder was supposed to pass 85,000 American shad and 1 million herring annually. Instead of 85,000 shad, the average over the last 10 years has been only 215 fish, less than 1% of the stated federal goal. And instead of 1 million herring, that average has been just under 80,000, roughly 8% of the goal. By some estimates, only 2.6% of all migratory fish get through, and possibly the greatest indication of failure is that in the last 10 years, an average of only 6 salmon have been counted at the monitoring station passing above the dam. Lack of fish is not the problem to the Androscoggin's recovery. Inventories of fish arriving at the base of the dam indicate robust populations looking for access to the watershed. In a 2001 to 2004 study using underwater counts, researchers observed up to 100,000 American shad immediately below the dam, but only approximately 130 shad were observed successfully climbing the ladder and passing into the upper reservoir. This data was similar to observations in subsequent years. In other words, plenty of fish are knocking at the door, but are locked out. Another strong indicator of the potential for fish population rebound is by comparing to the response of similar neighboring rivers after fish passage was improved. Only a few miles away, the Androscoggin joins the Kennebec River before flowing to sea past Bath and Fort Popham. The Edwards Dam, in many ways comparable to the Brunswick Dam, was situated at the head of tide and blocked all migration into the Kennebec watershed. In 1999, that dam was removed, and with the additional removal of Fort Halifax Dam a few years later, fish passage was restored up to the Sebasticook tributary. Within less than a decade, migratory fish counts exploded. This graph shows how recent annual herring numbers have averaged well over 4 million fish. So the unmet federal goals of 1 million herring on the Androscoggin River are not overly ambitious, and in fact, by some estimates, the potential for productivity could be as much as 2.7 million fish. After all, even a small river like the Damariscotta supports the passage of over 1 million herring into a single lake. These migratory fish play an important ecological role in the up and downstream ecosystems they move through. They're both predators and prey, maintain ecological balance, move nutrients and other resources, and are an important source of biological productivity. Without them, ecosystem health is diminished and prone to failure. Other species, including humans, suffer when these systems fail. There are also important economic arguments to consider. In one study published after the Edwards Dam was removed, estimates of the economic benefit related to recreational fishing alone ranged from $1.5 to $65 million every year. This is not even including the benefit to commercial fisheries. With time, there's been growing appreciation of the importance of shad and herring as a food source for commercial coastal fish. Research suggests that historic fishing grounds have disappeared in the last century because fish like cod no longer find the abundance of food migrating to sea from the rivers. As a result, commercial stocks have decreased and are found further offshore. Promoting productivity of shad and herring could reverse this trend, resulting in healthier commercial fish stocks closer to shore, reducing time and fuel used at sea, which are major costs, and reduce the safety risks associated with far offshore fishing. Increased productivity would likely reduce bait costs as well. The current 50-year federal license for the dam expires in 2029. At that point, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, will decide if renewal is justified and under what conditions. In some cases, such as the Edwards Dam, FERC denied renewal and the dam was removed. In others, FERC has assigned contingencies that must be met for continued licensing, such as fish passage targets. The next 3 years will involve the consideration of extensive studies, input from multiple agencies, and comments from the public. How will this natural resource that belongs to us all be used, and who will profit from it? This is literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to influence the future of this dam, considering the 50-year life of a typical FERC lease. So what are the implications if FERC decides to deny relicensing? The dam is owned by Brookfield Corporation. This large Canadian conglomerate, with over $1 trillion in assets, receives the lion's share of economic benefit. Local benefit of the dam is largely limited to the 90,000 megawatts of power generated annually. This supplies roughly 0.6% of Maine's total power consumption. Since the construction of the dam, solar has made incredible progress. If one considers the broader economic and environmental costs of hydropower, solar is generally cheaper than hydro. Annual production of 90,000 megawatts would likely require a commercial solar field no larger than 300 acres at an estimated development cost of roughly $150 million. It's important to note that solar field development costs have dropped by as much as 80% in the last decade, so this is likely an overestimate of what costs will be in 2029 at the time of FERC's decision. In general, commercial solar fields pay for themselves in less than a decade, so the cost to local communities would be minimal. Benefits to dam removal are notoriously difficult to estimate, but using the Edwards Dam removal as an example, recreational fishing would likely generate economic activity in the tens of millions of dollars, even if we assume the Androscoggin is half as productive. Research also suggests that commercial fisheries, other forms of recreation, local real estate values, and ecosystem services would also benefit. Another option is that the dam is reconfigured to better share the river with the migrating fish. The Brunswick Dam was designed with a 50-year-old perspective on river management and technology. In recent years, much progress has been made in redesigning dams that do not require creating a complete barrier across the river. One local example is the Howland Dam Fish Bypass Channel here in Maine. In some cases, installing a fish bypass or nature-like fishway is preferable to full dam removal. This is made easier in the Brunswick Dam case because it's a run-of-river system and doesn't rely on a large reservoir to generate power. Instead, barriers could possibly be reconfigured to generate energy in a smaller impoundment, reducing the dam's impact to a minimum. After almost 50 years of trying, the current dam and ladder configurations have proved poorly designed, and it's unlikely that tinkering with the existing system is going to make a noticeable difference. It's time to try something new. Whichever alternative is approved, it's reasonable for FERC to make any future lease contingent on specific fish passage targets. After a half-century dedicated to the single goal of hydropower, it's time to open our river to the diverse benefits it can offer us all. So let's let the fish back into the Androscoggin.